Welcome to the website recording of the Year 1 Maths Parent Meeting. I've recorded a few narrations for those of you who could not attend the Zoom, but if you have any questions, then please do not hesitate to contact me. The aims of the meeting are to give you an insight into how maths is taught at St Mary's in Year 1, to share the different methods of learning, explain the bar model and the part-whole model, introduce the Year 1 overview of maths, share the structure of a lesson in Year 1, and also to take away some ideas of how you can support your child at home. So first of all, at St Mary's, we take a mastery approach in maths. This means that children are given the opportunities to acquire a deep, long-term, secure and adaptable understanding of the subject. Mastery of maths is for all pupils, and it is not just the top few. When teaching Maths for Mastery, the whole class moves through the topics at broadly the same pace. Each topic is studied in depth, and the teacher does not move on to the next stage until all children demonstrate that they have a secure understanding of mathematical concepts. Students are given time to think deeply about the maths, so they really understand the concepts. The slower pace leads to greater progress because it ensures that students are secure in their understanding and teachers don't need to revisit topics once they've been covered in depth. Now, in a traditional primary school, maths lessons we used to put children into different groups based on perceived or anticipated ability. But this meant that from an early age, children were classed as those who can and those who can't do maths. But teaching from maths using the mastery approach is different because it offers all pupils access to the full maths curriculum. It's a very inclusive approach, and its emphasis on promoting multiple methods of solving a problem builds self-confidence and resilience in pupils. And although the whole class goes through the same content at the same pace, there's still plenty of opportunity for differentiation. Unlike the old model where advanced learners are accelerated through new content, those pupils who grasp concepts quickly are now challenged with rich and sophisticated problems within that topic. And those children who are not sufficiently fluent are provided additional support to consolidate their understanding before moving on. These are the three different ways of learning that we use to support children to learn, and this will be used throughout the school no matter what year they're in. So children will first start to learn and understand a concept in a concrete way. This basically refers to the use of manipulatives such as numicon, counters, shapes, objects and so on. It's a very practical way of learning. Children are encouraged to make numbers with these objects, and it often helps them to understand the concept being taught. This way of learning is paramount in Year 1 as it supports their understanding. Without this stage, children might be able to answer a sum, but they might not actually understand what it means. Once they've used the concrete materials, children will then move on to a pictorial or visual method of learning. This is where they use drawings to help them understand, such as a part-whole model or a bar model. Now, I'll explain these in more depth as we go through the presentation. After that, they would move on to an abstract way of learning, and this involves using written methods such as number sentences or mental methods in their head to get to their answer. So at St Mary's, we're working towards children being able to do maths in an abstract way. However, if they miss out on these first two steps, they will struggle to fully understand the concept. So some children might always need concrete materials to support them, because this might aid their understanding throughout the year, just like some children might continue to use bar models and part-whole models higher up. And I know for the fact that I've taught bar models and part-whole models in Year 5, and children use these in Year 1, so they're quite confident at using them as they progress through their learning journey and as they progress through their maths in our school. Here are some of the manipulatives or the concrete materials that we use in school, and I try and ensure that these are used in every maths lesson. These ones here are the multi-link cubes. These are our Dean or base 10. Now, these are really useful because it really helps children to see the ones, the tens, the hundreds, the thousands. And again, the continuity of the use of these is helpful because we use these all the way through to Year 6. Numicon, which they will have used in early years settings, either here at St Mary's or in outside nurseries and early years settings. Again, we use these a lot in Year 1. It really helps children to visualise that number, and if they then go on to draw the numicon, they're quite easy for them to draw. I'm also quite a big fan of the 10 frame. It's really useful for children to realise that when the 10 frame is full, that it represents 10, and it's very easy for them to count. And again, I actually make them physically put the counters onto the 10 frame or draw them on so that they can count as they're doing them. And it really helps with that one-to-one correspondence when counting and ensures that they don't make mistakes. Now this slide shows the part-whole model that I mentioned earlier on in the presentation. And it's a pictorial or visual method of learning which the children spend a lot of time understanding in year one to continue using as they progress in the school. We use them to help children understand what the different numbers mean in a calculation, because a calculation is made up of different parts and a whole, and this method helps the children to see that. For instance, in the first model here, we can see that the whole is 4, but it's made up of 2 parts, 3 and 1. Particularly useful to see this if you're trying to answer a missing number problem. 1 add something equals 4. You can actually see that it's 3. Now, when we talked about the differentiation, if a child was struggling with this, I would talk them through it, draw them out with them, get the child to draw them. But for those who were ready to move on, I would say, okay, well, this is the whole is 4. Is there another way that you can partition this? And then you can see here the second part-whole model. You've got the whole being 5, made up of 3 and 2. And again, it's saying to the children, well, is that the only way you can do this? Or are there other ways that you could partition number 5? But for this calculation, it really helps them to see that the 2 parts, 2 and 3, added together make a total of 5. There's another example of a part-whole model here, and you'll notice that actually this one looks like it's on the side. Part-whole models can be done either way. Sometimes the part is at the top, sometimes the parts are at the bottom or the side, and again this varied representation is really good to be introducing in year 1, because when they get to year 6 they might see the part-whole models presented in a different way. So I like to train them up from year 1 so that they can get used to seeing them in different formats. Now here is the bar model, very similar to a part-whole model, but the way we talk about this is we'll say to them the whole is 10, the whole bar is worth 10, and it's made up of these 2 parts, or we have divided the bar into 2 parts. We've divided it into 9, and then what would this missing number be here? There's lots of different ways they can count on a number line, they could do subtraction, but it really helps them to complete these calculations here by using these visual representations. Our models can be used for so many different types of calculations. We tend to just use them for addition and subtraction in year 1, but higher up they'll be used in lots of different learning concepts. So this image has an overview of what your children will be learning this year in maths. You can see that spring term we started with place value to 20, but that really built on the learning that they did with Miss Hughes in autumn 1, where they did place value to 10. We've now moved on to addition and subtraction with 20, and again you can see how that's been built on from previous learning where they did addition and subtraction to 10. Now here's an example of how each unit is broken down into smaller steps, and this is teaching place value to 20. Now we move in small steps to allow the children to develop that secure understanding that I mentioned on previous slides. And every single unit within the White Rose teaching sequence is broken down into small steps like this. I'd like to take this next few slides just to show you what a maths lesson would look like in year 1. So we always start with what we call the flashback 4, and it's vital that we revisit previously taught objectives so that the children can retain the information that they've been taught. Some objectives are only taught in one year group and they can never be visited, or they're not visited again, and that allows teachers to assess the children's learning and, more importantly, where there might be a gap in learning. So the children in year 1 will complete these usually on whiteboards or even verbally on the carpet. Once they get into year 2, these flashbacks are completed into the children's books. Now, this chart shows why flashbacks are so important and why repetition is vital for your children's learning in maths. And if I show you here, this one here is in 2019 in the SATS paper. It had the greatest number of the year 3-4 curriculum content ever assessed, which is why recapping every day is really helpful for children. I think about 50% of the content of that test was from year groups previous learning. So I like to make sure that we are recapping even in year 1 so that when they get into year 3, 4, 5 and 6, the children are used to that recapping of learning. After the starter, I'll go through the main teaching points on the slides on the carpet with the children in year one. I'll also have some concrete materials out, usually on the carpet, to assist. And then they will move on to varied fluency, and that's where they get that deep understanding using those concrete materials that I showed you on previous slides, 10 frames, using the visual methods, so bar models, part whole models, and then finally moving on to that abstract, as you can see here, the written calculations. And the reason we call it varied fluency is because you can see that those questions are presented to them in a variety of different ways. And again, that really ensures that they're getting that deep understanding of the concept that's being taught. After we've completed the varied fluency and everybody's ready to move on, we'll go on to the problem solving section. Now, we actually use the White Rose booklets in year one, and they tend to have, the first few questions tend to be varied fluency based questions, and then the last one or two questions in the booklet tend to be problem solving. I also have separate little challenges up over in the maths area, so if the children have completed their work, they can go over and get a challenge. And again, that's really quite important that they go over and get that, because I'm trying to encourage them to be independent, and it's not just a matter of me saying to them, well, you have to do that. I want them to do it, and I try and make sure that the challenges are fun or engaging for them. This is just an example of one of the challenges, and again, I take these from the White Rose schemes of learning, so it matches the unit that they're currently working on. And you can see here this little character, he's called Tiny. He also appears on the slides, and the children in year one recognise the names of the other characters that I used, because it's not just Tiny, there's about 7 different characters that are used. Again, it just makes it a little bit more fun and a lot more engaging for the children when working through the White Rose Mastery method. So why are we using the structure of fluency and reasoning? Well, there are 2 types of paper which we are supporting the children to be able to answer in the future, and these are arithmetic papers and reasoning papers. And on this screen you can see the types of questions the children will see in these different papers, so it's useful them to have already experienced answering different types of questions like the ones they're going to see in tests in the future. Now, we're not an exam factory. This isn't just about teaching them to pass a test. As said on the very first slide, the mastery approach really gives the children a deep and secure understanding of the mathematical concepts being taught. That's something that they take with them for life. And at St Mary's, we are, of course, encouraging our children to be lifelong learners. Parents often ask me, what can I do at home to help my child who's struggling with maths, or I just want to help my child to be the best that they can be at maths. Well, fluency is key, and that's why we use the mastery approach, because it has so much fluency in it, varied fluency question types. But I would say Hit the Button, which is one of the online games. This is on a website called Top Marks, is great. Matching numbers to words is really useful. A lot of the time, children get really thrown when it asks them to write an answer using words rather than numbers. So lots of practice for that would be really helpful. And again, using those missing number sentences. So don't just present the questions to them as, well, what's 3 add 2? You could say 5 is equal to 3 add something. Lots of role play, playing shopping, calculating prices, calculating change, adding and taking away. All of these things are going to be really useful in helping your child to become more fluent. These are some of the websites that I was telling you about. You've got Hit the Button here, which is on Top Marks. Top Marks is here, and there are lots and lots of different free maths games. You can also access the 1 Minute Maths. Now, this is provided by White Rose, and this app is probably one of my favorites. It's got really great section on subitizing, and subitizing is basically where you would see 3 counters and you'd instantly know it's 3 without counting. It's only for small numbers. Again, a bit like when you roll a dice and you automatically see 5 dots, it's 5, but younger children don't always know that. So subitizing is really good to help them recognize those quite quickly. Also on the White Rose website, there are other parental resources that you can access. Some of them are free, some of them you have to subscribe to. Helping your children with number formation, so actually how to write the numbers, is really useful. It's quite common for children to reverse numbers because, like letters, they're still learning how to form them. So you can get these little slips online for free. If you just type in number formation, you'll be able to download free ones. And I have these in school as well, which the children will use to practice. There's also videos on YouTube that does it in a really fun way. And again, I would just encourage you to sit there with a child while the YouTube video's on, and just there's one that we use in class quite a lot, and it's like a little rhyme and a little song. And they can just practice with a pencil and a piece of scrap paper. There are a few other ideas about how you can help your child at home with maths here. Please feel free to pause the presentation and have a look through these. And finally, if you have any questions, please speak to me either before school or after school, or just call the office and make an appointment to speak to me. Thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you all very soon. Thank you. Good evening.